I was watching an easy German video about a bakery in Berlin, and it was called Roggenmischbrot, something like that. And the thing that intrigued me was it had two different kinds of starters. It had a rye sourdough and then a biga, which a biga I made with my, what was the biga for? I think that was for the cranberry walnut bread. And then the main dough, and then it also takes figs, which I just bought, and some more walnuts. The only problem is my sourdough, although it was originally made from rye flour, is mostly wheat flour. So I have an idea. I have some whole grain rye I could grind for rye flour, but I have some pumpernickel flour left, so I'm going to use that first. I'm going to take my wheat starter, and I fed it, instead of feeding it wheat flour, or actually I use usually white bread flour, instead of feeding it that, equal parts of that and water, I fed it a third cup of rye flour and a third cup of water. And I'm going to do this for a few days in a row, maybe till it gets full. And by that time, it should be genuine rye sourdough starter instead of wheat flour sourdough starter. I'm looking at the proportions here for this biga, equal amounts of flour and liquid. So that is going to be more what I think of as a biga, not that really solid thing that I had for my cranberry walnut bread. Where's the pinch? Okay, what did it say, 2 pinches? All right, so there's 1 pinch, and these are hard to get out, and 2 pinches. Okay, let's stir that up. What kind of flour was this? Yeah, just white bread flour, and then tomorrow I will use rye flour and spelt flour. Okay, and then here's the 175 milliliters of water, so equal amounts as far as the grams go. Yeah, this is more what I'm used to. It's not so solid. I think I'm going to be happier with this. It's been a few days since I read the recipe, and I just noticed, you see I have that in bold? It needs to be at room temperature for, not overnight, but 20 hours. And I woke up to this morning. Apparently, I had a little bit too much sourdough for the container, so we'll stir that down. I'll throw this away. The biga had plenty of room. Remember, it has to go 20 hours, so it has to go another 5-6 hours. I'll stir them both down, and I'll clean up my mess. It has been 19 hours, which is close enough to 20 hours for me. So now I have my 2 starters. I measured the 350 plus 20, 370 grams of the rye sourdough, and now I'll start feeding my sourdough regular bread flour to bring it back eventually to regular sourdough. This biga I'm impressed with. I think I'm going to change the other recipe that I used a biga for and use this biga. Isn't it cool? It looks like a creature from the Blue Lagoon, or I don't know. Anyway, I like it. So I'm going to mix those two together. And then what's the rest of it? And then spelt flour. I'm actually just going to use white wheat because I don't feel like grinding spelt right now. Salt, rye flour. I'm going to use pumpernickel flour again. And then barley malt or molasses. I have dried malt, but I think I'll use molasses. As much as I would like to use sorghum because I really like the way it tastes, especially on corn mush, it's not really molasses. So I guess I'll use, and this will give the pumpernickel a really nice dark color, I'll use some blackstrap molasses. Other than that, see the mix-ins. While that stuff is mixing, I can be chopping up, scissoring up a couple figs and 40 grams of chopped walnuts. The recipe calls for 12 grams of salt. 1 teaspoon was 5 grams. And this is 11 grams, 10 grams. Wow, that surprises me. I didn't know it'd take that much salt. You know what? I think that's enough. 2 teaspoons of salt for that amount of flour. We'll go with that. The recipe calls for 60 grams of spelt flour. I have 78 grams here, half a cup. So I'll just use that anyway. And then it looks like I need triple that of rye flour, so not quite a cup and a half of rye. I added a couple teaspoons of the dough conditioner and just a half a cup of the pumpernickel flour. I'm going to put this in the bread machine. It will do a better job mixing it. The recipe says that 2 figs are about 50 grams. Let's see if that's true. 2 figs. It's only 32 grams. I'm doing big figs. 3 figs are 50 grams. Okay. And now we'll weigh out the walnuts. Here's my snipped figs and my walnuts. These are optional, of course. I think the loaf of bread that I saw on that video, the Easy German video in the bakery in Berlin, pretty sure that was just straight up. But hey, I like figs and I like walnuts, so I'm going to add them. I've kneaded in the figs and the walnuts, and so now it's just letting it rest for 90 minutes. This is a really heavy dough and smells, it smells kind of like a brewery. I am concerned about my German sourdough. I mean, remember, it doesn't have any yeast in it except just that little bit that was in the starter. And it said 90 minutes, it's been sitting around for over 2 hours, and it still seems really heavy. Let me give this a toss. Oh, oops. If you're watching this, it means it turned out okay, because if it didn't turn out, I'm not going to show you what it looked like. I'm going to make an executive decision here, and instead of making one big loaf that I think is going to take forever, I'm going to turn it into 2 smaller loaves. Yeah, and I'm going to make them long instead of one big circle like it talked about making. I think I'm going to make them into 2 long loaves. The reason being, there's less bulk there for, to have to raise. I'm just thinking it might work better. Boy, this is solid. Again, it's mostly rye flour, and there's very little yeast in it. I have no idea how long this is going to take to raise. It said half an hour. Half an hour, I don't know. The recipe said to make deep cuts, so I did. Those are deep crevices here with my little rata serrated knife. And well, I don't know any better, so I'm turning the oven on to 500 degrees. The oven is just about up to temperature. I sprinkled a bit of pumpernickel flour on the top. Pan of water is giving off steam. After the first 10 minutes, I will take that pan of water out carefully, and then I'll turn the temperature down. Well, I thought I'd give this a try since the last time I made bread it wasn't quite done in the middle. 203, 204 center, it's supposed to be 180, so this is done. I did tent it with foil because otherwise it would have been way too brown. It's pretty brown on the bottom anyway. I'm not going to cut it, but I want to pull it apart to show you what it looks like. And this is actually quite good. I think this would be great with soup, or again with some cream cheese on it.